Hey, this is Dizzy Reed from Guns N' Roses, and you're watching GNR Central. Yeah!
Hey everybody, what's going on, and welcome to GNR Central. And today I want to talk about the massive release of Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. So September 17th, 1991, both Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 were released by Guns N' Roses, and they sell a boatload of copies. But let's talk about some of the news articles that came out around that time. So the LA Times published an article on September 14th, 1991, titled, "Will Guns N' Roses Deliver a 1-2 Punch?" So according to the article, the nation's record retailers were bracing themselves this weekend for what is expected to be an unprecedented sales barrage Tuesday when Guns N' Roses released 2 albums simultaneously. More than 4 million total copies of Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 have been shipped by Geffen Records to U.S. retailers, by far the highest advance order in the history of the record business. This should, most industry sources agree, enable the albums to claim the first and second positions on the national sales charts during the first week of release. But Ed Rosenblatt, who is the president of Geffen Records at the time, cautioned that those chart positions may be jeopardized by the refusal of about 4,500 of the more than 18,000 record retail outlets in the country to carry the albums because they considered objectionable lyrical content on the records. So he went on to say it's possible it could cost us the #1 album ranking, he said. So officials at SoundScan, which basically kept track of all the records that were being sold at the time, said the company that compiles statistics for the Billboard charts disagree. They said Geffen won't be penalized by the decision of some stores not to carry the album, SoundScan chief and operating officer Mike Shillette said in a phone interview from New York. He said, "Look at it this way. Metallica debuted at #1 without any significant sales in the same stores. Consumers will simply buy more albums at retail outlets." He also went on to say that stores won't be carrying the albums. Chiefly discount chains such as Kmart and Walmart only account for 10% of the nation's album sales. A picture because those of the stores do far less volumes in records than full-line record stores do, such as Tower Records and Warehouse. Recession-pinched retailers who have also decided to stock the album are banking on double Guns N' Roses package to bolster basically sagging record sales and stimulate the foot traffic into malls. So Tower Records said, "We need it." He said the first half of the year has not been great for the record retail. In a marketing ploy to dramatize sales interest, an estimated 1,000 U.S. record stores were opening at 12:01 a.m. Tuesday, the first minute they can legally sell the records. So the list included about 100 in Southern California, including some Tower Records, Warehouse, and Musicland outlets. Plus, numerous mall record retail outlets were operating under leases that prevent them from partaking in the late-night sales plan to open at 7 a.m. to accommodate consumers on their way to school. So they said this album is going to be huge, said the regional manager of Tower Records on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood, who expected a turnout of at least 1,000 fans during the 2 early morning hours the store will be open. He said anticipation for Guns N' Roses' release has been building since May. I would be shocked if this record didn't enter the charts at #1. So Arnie Bernstein, who is the president of Musicland, which was the largest retail chain in the nation at the time, said there was so much consumer interest in the album that the company, borrowing a technique from video retailers, instituted a pre-purchase policy for Use Your Illusion so that fans could be guaranteed copies on the day of the release. He said this is a very rare occurrence, Bernstein said in a phone interview, where we've only ever pre-sold 1 or 2 other superstar albums before. I think Michael Jackson's Bad was the last time I saw Frenzy, anything like this. So due to the crass lyrics, Geffen Records has stickered both Illusion records with a warning label that reads parental advisory, explicit lyrics. That's not the only sticker that's on the records. Axl Rose and the rest of the band also requested that an additional sticker be placed beneath the shrink wrap packaging. The message on the sticker says that there are some lyrics that may be objectionable to some listeners and goes on to suggest, using a thinly disguised vulgarity, that those people buy something from the New Age section. So as a result, Western Merchandisers Incorporated and Handelman Company, the Rack Jobbers, which supply records to more than 4,500 discount stores, have refused to stock the record. So Handelman officials can basically decline to comment on the firm's decision, but the vice president of Western Merchandise cited Walmart's refusal to carry G&R's record as part of the long-standing corporate policy. They said Walmart feels the revenue realized from the sales of a record with objectionable lyrics would be more than offset by the discontent it might cause customers for making such product available to children. So Musicland's Bernstein took a different position regarding the impact of explicit lyrics to his customers. He said, "We're not in the censorship business," Bernstein said. "We're in the retail business. We feel the industry has taken the proper precautions to advise parents as to the kind of lyrics that are contained on the album." So here's some news footage of the anticipation of the Illusions records coming out and some of the pre-release parties as well.
Country are planning to fling open their doors or simply stay open until 1 minute past midnight tonight, when the new LPs will officially go on sale. Geffen Records, the group's label, says it already has total advance orders for 4 million copies of the albums, an unprecedented figure that's double that of the previous record holder, Michael Jackson's album Bad. Despite Guns N' Roses' commercial potency, however, more than 3,000 record stores will not be stocking their new albums. They belong to the family-oriented Walmart and Kmart chains, both of which have declined to carry the records, apparently, as a Walmart spokesman acknowledged, because of vulgar lyrics.
Fans lined up to buy the rock group's long-awaited second album, a 2-record set, which went on sale at midnight. About 1,000 record stores across the country, including Los Angeles, opened their doors at 12 a.m. to accommodate the rush of fans.
I love Guns N' Roses more than anything in the world.
After years of delay, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, the 2 new albums by Guns N' Roses, went on sale across the country last night at 1 minute past midnight. Geffen Records had already shipped more than 4 million copies of the records to stores, and one shop in Rochester, New York reported selling 1,500 copies in its first half hour of post-midnight business. Here's a look at some scenes from coast to coast just after the clock struck 12.
There's been a lot of anticipation. I can't remember a record that's had this much a buzz about it before it came out. It makes for a lot of excitement around here.
We've been here since 7. And if I didn't have to work, I would have been here earlier.
It's such a long wait. I've just been dying for this album for the longest time, and any chance of having it as soon as possible, I'll take it.
We have no patience to get this album. I mean, it's going to be killer.
It was apparently a wise move on the part of Geffen Records to ship a reported 4 million copies of the Guns albums, because at 12:01 Tuesday morning, the fans were on hand to start buying them.
And there's going to be nobody that's going to go home and play it tomorrow. You know, you're going to go home and play it tonight.
We're going to wake up the people upstairs, that's for sure, man.
There are 30 new songs spread across the 2 Use Your Illusion discs, including 2 versions of the new single Don't Cry. But Guns frontman Axl Rose insisted that the 2 records not be packaged as one double album, but instead be sold separately.
We were like going, well, a lot of kids and a lot of people, you know, when they go to buy a record, they go to buy one, and they won't be able to, you know, it's like, if there's a choice, well, I'd like to get Guns N' Roses, but it's $29.95, and this other band's told me, oh, I'll get that one. You know, we're like, maybe we can, you know, get past that a little bit.
I think it's a lot better than having a double album, because if a person doesn't have enough money to buy a double album, they can buy one, save up, and buy the other one later.
Disappointed that they're, you know, selling it 2 separately. They should, you know, they're just doing it to make more money. You know, it's just like a ripoff, but I'm a fan, so I'll buy it anyway.
Nobody bought just one of these. Every single person bought both of them at the same time.
The frenzy was slightly muted in St. Louis, the site of a riot following a gun show last July in which the band's equipment was destroyed. The Use Your Illusion liner notes contain a 2-word insult to the town, which prompted a local radio station to round up as many angry citizens as it could to respond in kind.
They're nasty, you know, they annoy everybody, but that's, you know, that's rock and roll.
There were no such reservations among fans in New York City, where Tower Records started selling the Use Your Illusion CDs at $10.99 apiece, $6 below the suggested list price.
I love Axl so much, I'm shaking.
They're going to be legends. They're going to be like the Doors or Led Zeppelin or the Beatles. Just like Wheaties, Guns N' Roses, you got to have it, man.
So about a day after the album's release, the LA Times ran an article about the legions of fans who rushed to area record stores to be able to snag their copies of the Guns N' Roses new records. So they basically said that the records were expected to sell over 10 million copies and outsell Appetite for Destruction. And they also said about 100 fellow diehard fans went to the Tower Records on Beach Boulevard. But they also compared it to a similar event that happened when Metallica released the Black album. So they said the scene was decidedly less hectic than on August 12th when the new Metallica album was released with similar promotion. Perhaps because the one that had been limited to 2 stores in the area, this Tower outlet, and the one on Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood. The line there was about 4 times as long as the Guns N' Roses line. They also said during the Metallica album sale, which lasted more than an hour, radio station KNAC was broadcasting from Anaheim store's parking lot, blaring music that infuriated nearby residents and drew 2 visits from the police. This time around, noise was limited to a few stories reverberating from cars and vans, and 1 police car rolled through the parking lot at one point but didn't stop. The whole thing was pretty much over in 30 minutes. The atmosphere was even more subdued at the other stores across the country. So according to a random telephone survey, most sold between 20 and 50 copies of each release, employees said. At the Tower on Sunset, widely considered the Southland mecca of heavy metal, about 800 albums were sold. Most buyers purchased both releases. You can't have one without the other, said a 20-year-old fan. And Tower was charging $11.99 for one compact disc and $22 for both. Cassettes went for about $7.99 a piece. A few people bought the vinyl LP at $11.99 each, and 16 customers at the Tower in Anaheim also picked up copies of Ozzy Osbourne's No More Tears, which also went on sale on Tuesday and which included free Ozzy t-shirts. So here's a short clip of Entertainment Tonight where they interview Ozzy Osbourne and some of the criticism that he was trying to capitalize on Guns N' Roses' huge release that day.
In Manhattan, rock star Ozzy Osbourne took advantage of the crowds in record stores last night to promote his new album by shaking hands and signing autographs. He wasn't bothered by comments that he was trying to cash in on Guns N' Roses' popularity.
There's enough room for everyone. I don't care. I mean, good luck to Guns N' Roses. They don't need any luck,
And the same day, the LA Times published another article saying the marketing triumph for Guns N' Roses, they took an estimated $5 million in just one day worth of sales for the records. And here's an MTV News report where they talked about the launch of the records and how much money they made almost immediately.
Jason Whittington, the national sales director for Geffen Records, says that between 12:01 and 2 a.m. last night, fans across the country bought more than 500,000 copies of the Guns N' Roses records, which means it's already gold and heading very rapidly toward platinum. Singer Axl Rose left town for the big release date, but guitarist Slash snuck into the Tower Record store on Sunset Boulevard, where he used to work as a clerk, to observe the sales frenzy through a two-way mirror. Guns N' Roses will be taking their new material back out on the road probably sometime in October.
So just before the Use Your Illusion records were about to chart on the Billboard charts, there was some bad news for the band. So on September 24th, 1991, there was an article published that said guitarist Izzy Stradlin may stop touring with Guns N' Roses. So according to the article, just as Geffen announced Guns N' Roses' two new albums sold a record 2.5 million copies each during their first week of release, there were reports Monday that rhythm guitarist Izzy Stradlin may stop touring with the LA hard rock band. So neither Geffen Records nor Doug Goldstein, who was the group's manager at the time, would comment on reports of Stradlin's rumored action, and rumors began to surface after the guitarist failed to show up for a video shoot on September 15th in Los Angeles, most notably for the Don't Cry video. So Bryn Breidenthal, who was the vice president of publicity for Geffen, said at the time that Stradlin was taking advantage of the first break in a 2-year worldwide tour to take a vacation in Europe and didn't want to return just for the video. But Tom Atencio, who's the co-manager of the rock group Jane's Addiction, said that Monday that Dave Navarro, the group's guitarist, had been contacted about sitting in for Stradlin if the guitarist decides to stop touring. Now, Guns N' Roses was scheduled to resume touring in the U.S. late next month. And they went on to say this isn't the Steven Adler situation all over again, a source close to the band said, referring to the 1990 decision by GNR to fire their drummer Adler because of what the band members maintained was excessive drug use. Adler then has subsequently sued the band. They said this is totally Izzy's decision and appears to be based on whether he wants to spend the next 2 years of his life on the road in such a highly volatile situation. And even if Stradlin decides to stop touring, he would presumably continue to write and record with the band. The guitarist plays a prominent role on the new Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 albums, singing lead on some songs, including 14 Years, as well as writing or co-writing a dozen songs on the album. So Jane's Addiction Navarro would be available for touring because the group's September 26th show in Honolulu will be its last, Atencio said. Dave Navarro has been approached by GNR to play on tour, but he has made no decision as of yet, the article said. On September 26, 1991, it's official that Guns N' Roses albums entered the Billboard charts at number 1 and number 2. They said in less than 2 weeks, the controversial LA band's latest release takes an unprecedented top 2 chart positions in 4 countries. So it was the first time ever that a pop act, and they called Guns N' Roses a pop act, I'm not calling them a pop act, has ever commanded the 2 top positions on the Trade magazine's authoritative pop album chart. So the albums have entered the pop charts at number 1 and 2 in England, Australia, as well as Japan. So the controversial LA based band, Use Your Illusion 2 and Use Your Illusion 1 were both released September 17th, sold approximately 770,000 copies and 675,000 copies respectively during their first week in stores in the US. So the Illusion 2 sales were almost 30% more than the 600,000 registered last month by Metallica, which was the previous 1 week high. So one interview they did with the vice president of purchasing from a pretty big company said retailers haven't seen anything like this in years and were thrilled. So Arnie Bernstein, who is the president of Musicland, the largest retail chain in the nation, said the albums are also sparking the general upswing in retail business that merchandisers had hoped for during a relatively slow sales year. He said sales for both albums have far exceeded our projections, Bernstein said on Wednesday. He also said, plus it's a mega hit that's driving customers back into the malls and stimulating business across the board. Meanwhile, Garth Brooks, whose Rope in the Wind album entered the Billboard charts last week at #1 with a healthy 300,000 sales, continued to sell at the same pace according to industry sources, but that pace will only be good enough for #3 on the upcoming charts this week. And Mariah Carey's Emotions album sold about 150,000 copies during its first week in stores, enabling it to enter the weekend's chart at #4. Metallica's self-titled album on Elektra Records sold approximately 135,000 copies for #5 spot on the charts. So that does it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And were you one of the people who lined up to get the Illusions records? I think I was way too young to remember that, but my brother did end up getting the cassette tapes. But I don't think he stood in line and waited. I mean, I grew up in a small town of like 8,000 people, and I don't know if any record stores even had the midnight release back then. So let me know in the comment section below, guys, and be sure to hit subscribe and like if you want to see more videos just like this. And go check out GNRCentral.com for the latest Guns N' Roses news. Take care.